I'm going to get weekly sales from mom and pops if I make a deal, because I'm very concerned that tenants are going to open and think that they're good mom and pops and realize it's going to take too much out of them to ramp back up.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odum and Steven Silverman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odum, flying solo. And as you know, we are getting ready for a second round of the PPP funding, the Payroll Protection Program from the federal government. We missed on the first one, and Steven's busy getting that work done, and he's not able to join us. I know some folks had asked if he's okay. Steven's fine. He's healthy. It's just, we're dealing with the same problems you guys are. We have tenants that we are dealing with across our portfolio of properties, and landlords and banks, and everybody's asking for information. And then, of course, we have the additional work of the PPP and a number of other things. And it's just a lot of work. It's hard for us to try to get separated and sit down for the show at one time. So in the meantime, I'm handling it. Steven will be back as soon as we're able to get some degree of sanity back in our lives. Recently, we've been spending a lot of time with retailers and landlords and trying to walk them through the process, because a lot of tenants, particularly on the retail side, have been asking for rent abatements. They've been shuttered by the government and the COVID, and there's not a lot they can do about it. And landlords, at first, I think it was a shock to them. No, they're going to have to pay, with the reality if you don't have revenue coming in, you cannot pay the rent and pay salaries and try to keep a roof over your head if you're an independent retail operator. And so a lot of conversations going back and forth between the bank and the landlord and the tenants. And we've been spending a tremendous amount of time on those things. And frankly, we have a lot of retail operators who have they're multi-unit operators. And besides all the issues they're having with the shuttering of their business, now they have to go back and try to figure out what's going on with their leases so that they can have an intelligent conversation with the bank. Because we underwrote those leases, it's easiest for us to go back and be able to join on those calls to the landlord and try to help shine a little bit of a light on the situation on the lease and maybe act as a little bit of an intermediary in helping. A lot of our tenants are on top of it. Others are just stretched a little thin right now. We understand that. So we're spending a lot of time with tenants and landlords trying to help them through the situation. Before I get too far into the show, I would like to give a shout out to Parker Heislett. Parker went on to the iTunes store and gave us a review. He says, appreciate what you all are putting out. Phenomenal content. Parker, that is very much appreciated, going on to the iTunes store and giving us a review. It does help us with guests that they will go and look at our reviews, not only on the iTunes store, but also on the Google Play Store, and make a decision based on the number of reviews, whether it's worth their time to come on our show and invest time with us and then invest time with you. So if you've not done so already, we would appreciate you going on and giving us a review at either the iTunes store or the Google Play Store. Again, Parker, we really appreciate the time that you took to do that. I think you guys are going to be really pleased with the guest that we have today. We have Beth Azor of Azor Advisory Services in Weston, Florida. Beth has been on the show before. She's a broker, a property manager, an investor, a mentor, and a center of influence in the commercial real estate community. But more importantly, Beth is just a good person. She donates hours of her time for the benefit of the industry and the retail world in general. Beth is going to talk to us today about how she is dealing with this crisis and managing her properties, her tenants, and her banking relationships. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, it seems like it's been 10 years since the last time we had you on, and really the last month seems like a year. So why don't you give us?
Yes, it definitely has.
Why don't you give us sort of an overview of your properties, and we can spend the rest of the time that we're together talking about how you're dealing with this situation.
Sure. So I have 6 shopping centers in South Florida. They range from 11,000 square feet to 75,000 square feet. And they are all within 15 minutes of my home, which is awesome. And I have 5 mortgages out of the 6. 1 property I do not have a mortgage.
Okay. All retail. Are they mom and pops or are they nationals?
All retail. I have some nationals. I have a few Starbucks. I have an Aldi supermarket, Sherwin-Williams, Sprint Corporate. But I have 49 tenants, and of the 49 tenants, probably 15 are nationals.
15s are nationals. So why don't we try to break it down in terms of, let's talk about the tenants first, and then we can roll into how you're dealing with your banks. The nationals are probably a little bit different than the mom and pop. So I would imagine they're pretty much all asking for some sort of rent abatement. Is that accurate?
So most of the tenants are asking for something. There are some that are not. Aldi, the supermarket, who is in and doing great business, did not ask for anything. The corporate cell phone guys have not asked for anything. So there are some that have not asked, but that is probably less than 15% of the portfolio. Most, 85% has asked for something, either a full waiver, a deferral, or a combination of, maybe CAM only, operating expenses only, and a percentage of sales, or, things like that. It's all over the board what the asks are.
And so when we listened to, you and I talked, we discussed a little bit prior to that, you had talked on a conference call when this first started, and things have changed quite a bit. And you talked a little bit about how you're dealing with the nationals versus the mom and pops. But why don't we give a little bit of an overview for folks that didn't have the benefit of listening to that interview of what you're doing now and how that might have changed since that original phone call that you gave to your listeners and social media followers back in March?
Sure. I was actually in Idaho when all of this kind of hit, and I realized, I said, you know what? I've been through this game before. Let me see if some people would like to be on listen to a webinar of how I've handled it before. And I put it out there and was shocked when 640 people signed up. And I kind of thought, this is bigger than I thought. I because I wasn't home and I was out in Idaho, I had been out there for 2 weeks. I didn't have a grasp on the reality of what was truly happening. I was kind of living in a bubble out there. And that call, I focused on, be tough. When they ask for rent reductions or, rent abatements, just send them a package that basically asks for everything in their firstborn. And I was completely different than what's going on now. I mean, back then when we had that first call, no one was closed. There wasn't a shutdown of society and retail as we know it.
Right.
The schools were still open. So, it completely upends the whole system when the government comes in and says, you're closing, you nail salon and you battery store and you sports apparel store and it's completely changes things when the government says it removes most of the leverage from the landlords. I mean, yes, do we have leases? Of course. But it's a lot harder, when the tenant has been forced to close at no fault of their own or the landlord's, right, to kind of stick to your guns. Now, there are certainly probably some much bigger operations that, can do that. But I have spoken to no less than 30 landlords from, as small as my portfolio to 400 properties. And I would say every one of us is doing some sort of deal. Fast forward to today, we are now taking the path of, can we improve our contracts and agreements and real estate due to this? Like, let's not be victims. If a tenant comes to us and we have to make a deal because they haven't been open for 2 months and, they're offering to defer the rent or pay half, can we as landlords do that, but get back an exclusive, or take the deal from a gross lease to a triple net lease, or renew an option early? So that's what I think most landlords are doing. They are understanding we have to play ball. Again, with some tenants, I have tenants that never communicated with me for 4 or 5 weeks. When April came, I 3-dayed them. And of the 9 people I 3-dayed, which means I defaulted them in writing, I did that with 9 people. 4 sent checks, FedExed, and 2 got on the phone with me. So it did what I needed it to do, right? It got me either money, which was great, or communication.
I think that's really the most important thing. Obviously money's important, right? But just to be ghosted is the most frustrating aspect of this. So you have folks, everybody's afraid of what's happening and they're worried about their livelihood and their families and everything else. But communication is so important between landlord and tenant. When they ghost you, you're a small business person too, Beth. And that's, I think, what many tenants that behave like this don't seem to understand. You're trying to put a roof over your head yourself. And, some tenants just see the landlord as, well, this is this greedy person, and they can deal with the problems later. So hopefully through these communications, you 3-day, you're able to actually resurrect that relationship. And if not, like, how are you handling it?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 that are still not communicating, and I don't understand that. And we're going to be 3-daying again on May, 2nd, or, if I have a grace period. My guess is those are the ones that aren't going to reopen. That's my guess. I've got 3 that I have not had communications with. 2 are mom and pops. 1 is a national, and I am predicting that those mom and pops, have flown the coop. They've left the country. They're not reopening. That's my prediction on those 2. And the national, I don't know what the heck's going on with them, but they may be filing for bankruptcy, which is so important. If you think that that's going to happen, that you keep the 3 days, up every month that it goes on, so that you are in the queue if they do file, that you're a creditor for the full amount that you're owed. If you have. I know that most of your audience is in Florida, so that's how it is in Florida. I don't know how it is in other states, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get legal advice. But keeping your 3-day notices and your defaults up to date to the day that they've accrued the expense is important.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear if we get some comments from some of our attorneys on this call. But what our attorneys are telling us is that the eviction process, even though it might not legally be shut down, it's effectively shut down. At least it is in Hillsborough.
Sure.
Yeah, in Hillsborough County. Yeah.
That's for sure, but it'll open up, and then we got to be ready,
Mm-hmm. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the difference in how you're communicating, and you probably can't get into specific deals with national versus mom and pops, but like how you're communicating and working out deals with national versus mom and pop. What's the thought process and the communication pattern there?
So it has a lot to do with the space in the center. So I have a center where I have a national, and if that national moved out, I would not be able to replace them for a very long time. We are not going to see national deals for probably, until early to mid 2022. So if you like the credit, even though today them not paying rent is not making us feel very good about the quote unquote credit, but it's very important to evaluate if this person leaves, can you replace them? And how long is it going to take you to replace them? What's the downtime? What's the commission? What's the TI? And what's the rent? So I have a couple that I could not replace. Therefore, I'm playing ball with them. Basically, I have zero leverage. And if they want to not pay rent for 3 months or until they get open for business, I'm kind of at their mercy because that's the situation of the property. In another property, I have a national that is $20 below rent. They were one of the ones that I 3-dayed, and the CFO of the entity called me, and they wanted like CAM only for 3 months, and they wanted to defer, the balance. They wanted to put it at the end of the term. And I said, no, what I'll do is your lease is coming up. You have a 5-year option renewal in 18 months. I want you to renew now, the 5-year, and I'll do 50% of gross. And you have to pay it back in January, February, or March of 2021. Mm-hmm. And they agreed. I said, and very important, I said, you have to go to ACH. And instead of annual sales, I want monthly sales. But the most important thing is this needs to be signed in 3 days. Like, I don't want to have a lot of back and forth. I don't want my neighbors to wake up and realize they're going to have 20 to 30% new vacancy in their projects across the street and try to go get my tenants and offer them, the sun, the moon, and the stars. So I want to lock. I'm going to actually even tenants that are paying rent that haven't even asked me for anything. If they have an option coming up in the next 18 months, I'm locking them up. And in one case, I have a mom and pop who paid April, already paid May, and I'm going to go to him tomorrow, and his lease is coming up in like 13 months, and I'm going to say, if you renew now, I'm going to waive 90 days of rent for him. His rent is $3,000 a month. For $9,000 for me to lock him in is the best use of my leverage and my negotiation at that property, because what I'm trying to do every day is spend 50% of my day on handling the emergencies or the challenges or the issues of the day, and 50% of my time we're considering a year from now. And a year from now, if we all wake up with 20 to 25% more vacancy, it's going to look awful. And I want to shore up the tenants I want to keep now with a little bit of a, carrot.
Can you talk a little bit about why that particular tenant that you wanted to cut that deal with? Are they are they a tenant that you feel pretty strongly, regardless of the situation, that they're going to emerge from the coronavirus situation and be able to survive? Is that why you cut him that deal? Yeah.
He's been in the center for 20 years, never missed a payment, never was a problem. It's a use that there aren't 20, he doesn't have a lot of competition. So if his use left my center, I don't think I could replace the use. Like, unlike a nail salon. Like a nail salon, if a nail salon moves out, you could replace it in a second.
Sure.
This is a use that's a rare use, very entrenched into the community, and in an easy reload. Like, anyone up and down the street could go to him and say, move over to my center. I'll give you $30 a square foot in TI, and I'll pay the last 12 months of the lease to Beth for you. Mm-hmm. And so easy reload, great tenant, great use, not a messy or dirty use, not a restaurant use, not a lot of garbage. It's pure retail, which is so rare today to have a pure retailer, right? Someone that sells merchandise, and an easy pluck for a competitor of mine. So I want to lock him in. And for me, if he moved out and I had to replace him, I'd spend a lot more than $9,000 between TI and commissions and downtime.
Now, talk to me also about, because there was a lot that you mentioned, not only in the last breath both of you and I took, but the one before. You mentioned about the percentage of sales. Was the deal cut, was it already a percentage of sales contract, or now it's a percentage of sales because you're asking for transparency?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I didn't have percentage rent in that deal, and I chose not to even do it. I don't want that. I do want monthly sales because I'm going to get weekly sales from mom and pops if I make a deal, because I'm very concerned that tenants are going to open and think that they're good mom and pops and realize it's going to take too much out of them to ramp back up, and they don't have savings, and they're going to. I think we're going to have a wave. We're going to have a little bit of a wave of people not opening. Like I already got my first call yesterday. I'm not reopening.
Okay.
Those 3 that are not talking to me, or those 2, I don't think they're reopening. I think that then we're going to have a bunch of them reopen. And in 90 days to 120 days, we're going to have the next fallout where they lost too much. They lost too much momentum. They lost clients. The government is putting into place, like dining rooms cut in half or plexiglass between nails. So there's things that are going to happen that I'm going to lose more. So I'm doing deals where pay 50% of gross, or I have another tenant that is a 7-location franchise. And what I did with them was I agreed to take 70% of their rent for 3 months, waive the 30%, not do the deferral, but I got back 3 exclusive items, 3 items that I now can go do 3 new deals with in my center if I have the vacancy that prior they had an exclusion in their lease. That was valuable to me. Their rent's $10,000 a month. So I waived 3 times 3, another $9,000. For $9,000 to be able to do 3 new uses, 3 new leases with uses they previously had excluded was beneficial for me.
Okay.
And the reason very important that I'm not allowing people to defer to the end of their term is because when the end of their term comes and they exercise an option, the rent's higher. Why in the world would I extend an initial term by 3 months? So they have to pay the rent back in the term, right? I don't want to delay the increase that I'm going to get in the option. That's just silly.
How are they reacting? They're coming to you and asking for you to help them, and your response is to renegotiate their deal, try to help them, give a little, take a little. Are any of them reacting in a really negative way, like you are taking advantage of me? And if so, how are you dealing with that?
So none of mine are. Remember, 6 properties within 15 minutes of my house. I'm in those properties, if not every day, 5 times a week. I know all of those tenants. I've yet to have a nasty situation. However, I have one third-party deal where there's a major anchor tenant, and across the country, they opened with, we're not opening until Christmas, and you need to give us 10 months free that we're never paying back. They opened with that. And you had, I was talking clients off ledges around the country, and then you also had big, huge REITs that were saying, great, then drop, your 42 exclusives. So it's, and there are those types of tenants out there, and the rumor is they're keeping lists of landlords that are defaulting. Well, we've let them know we're keeping lists too. I mean, you don't call a landlord, and in particular, my client, a guy in Ohio, not a REIT, just a guy, a family. He happens to have 6 of this one retailer in 6 of his 15 centers. They're lucky he didn't, take harm to his body. Like, it was terrible what they did. Hi, we're not opening till Christmas, and we're not paying rent for 10 months. We have mortgages. So I'm blessed that I have not had that situation, but because I coach a lot of people in the industry and they're my clients, I've talked a few off ledges with regards to some. And what's the best thing that's happened out of this is the unbelievable collaboration across the retail industry with small companies, large companies, REITs, privates, mom and pops. I mean, us on the landlord side, there was a retailer that, was spreading a rumor that this one public REIT company had given everyone 90-day waivers, which was not the case at all. And but they were telling all of us, of the larger landlords, that story. And, we were unsure, that we were unstable. Who are we to believe? Are we supposed to believe this tenant, or are we supposed to believe the landlord? And so the collaboration has been phenomenal. And I think that will help our industry going forward. But every letter we get, and we're not getting a lot of letters. A lot of this negotiation is being done verbally, which is very smart,
right?
Because there have been some letters that have been floated. Like there's an infamous mattress firm email to their employees that got floated on Facebook. I think it finally got removed, but pretty good that these public companies don't put some of this stuff in writing.
So why don't we talk about one other point that caused my eyebrows to raise quite a bit? You talked about national deals are not going to come back till 2022, not 2021. We're in 2020, 2022. That's when national deals might be coming back. Talk to me about your thoughts there.
Sure. So think about this. So we open up hopefully in June. When does the public national retailer let their manager get on a plane and go see a site? So that's question number one. So is that in June? Is that in July? Is that ever? Let's just assume, because I'm a glass half full girl, it's in June. Okay, so June 15th, real estate manager shows up to look at site. Great. Now boss has to come see it. Boss in operations. Let's say I'm optimistic, and that's a month later, July 15th. Now they have real estate committee. I'm going to be optimistic, and that's August 15th, September 1st, and the site gets approved, and now we get to have a 3-month lease negotiation. So now we're at Christmas. Now we have to do the plans. The plans take 45 days. We're in February. Now we have to get a permit, 3 to 4 months. We're now in May or June, and now we have to construct. So if it could be 4 to 6 months. So now we're November, December 2021. I posted that on LinkedIn, and 63 people told me that I was completely missing the fact that they just thought I was completely overly aggressive, and that there's no way, and this was national retailers, landlords, REITs, that we're not going to see any national deals done till spring of 2022. Because it starts with the travel, and that's the big unknown.
Right.
Because most of the national tenants are public companies. There will be a liability issue. Now, if they have, so I think that we're going to see a shift in retail where you're going to see either more real estate managers in markets where they can drive, or there's going to be a bigger dependence on brokers. But even if there's a bigger dependence on brokers, like tenant rep brokers, they still have to have company representation approve the site. So I have predicted that we're going to see, with 30 million people unemployed, some I hope national retailers adding to their teams more in regional markets where they can get, drive to the sites. But for the next, 3, 4, 6 months, air travel is up in question. And the public companies putting their people on planes, I think there's going to be a liability question there.
And it's interesting that as all this is unraveling, the discussion about, there's really no reason for people to do X or Y anymore we're going to Zoom things. Matterport is going to become the dominant player in the industry because of the 360-degree, three-dimensional views. Listen, at the end of the day, if you're betting against humans being humans, you're going to lose. Even with this virus, that's my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, but people, national retailers, and even local mom and pops want to get boots on the ground and look at the ingress and egress of the system. They want to see are there trouble making a left-hand turn, even though there's an ingress and egress. They want to see that. They want to feel it. They want to walk the plaza. They want to put eyeballs on the type of demographic that's coming in. And no Matterport even similar product is going to replace that walking on a property. I don't know. Do you think I'm crazy, or is that what you feel too?
You're 100% right. There's no way they're going to make millions of dollars of decision on opening a new store without physically being on the site, looking at the intersection, looking at the traffic. Impossible. Won't happen. Never will happen. I will eat my words if that happens. Never going to happen.
Yeah, and for the folks that are listening that also have office properties, we've heard all the dire predictions on the office side. Listen, we run a property management business. I know you run a property management business, and you've also have your brokerage. I hate Zoom calls with my employees. I want to be able to exchange information very quickly. I want to be able to see their body language. I want to be able to see how they respond, and I don't want them to be able to. If I need to get in touch with them, I don't want to call and have the phone ring, and then there's these niceties of, hey, how are you? It's good. What's going on? And then you lead into it, and then you can't see them. You can't read them. I hate that. I'm going to have my people back in the office as soon as it's safe to have my people back in the office.
100% for sure.
If you're going to bet against people being people, I think you're going to lose. And we've heard the dire predictions. And I was on a conference call last week about the restaurant industry, and they're going, it's changed forever. It's going to be takeout. Are you crazy? It's never food. Restaurants are not about food. It's about experience. And at some point, we're going to have a solution to the virus. At some point, there's going to be either a mitigating drug or a vaccine. I don't know when that's going to be. Obviously, there's been some setbacks. We thought maybe this hydroxychloroquine might have been something. It's not. And of course, now there's these other drugs that are a little bit more of a long tail. But restaurants are about experience, and you can't get that from a styrofoam takeout. You just can't. I want to go back in and sit and socialize with people. That's what eating in a restaurant is about to me. And maybe I'm crazy, man, but that's me. I want to go back.
I agree.
So one of the first things I want to do is go back with my friends and sit around a table and all toast each other and give each other a big hug and eat the meal. That's the most important thing. Yeah, the food's important, but that social bonding is the dominant reason why I attend and go and frequent restaurants.
I 100% agree with you.
So we've talked a lot about tenancy and the dealing with the tenant side of this. You're in a rock and a hard place because 5 of your 6 properties have mortgages. And of course, most of the tenants, until you have that personal conversation with them, they call the tenants, the landlords, money bags, and they're just going to take the lumps here. They're going to have to cut a deal with me, and they're okay because they're going to be okay. I'm still paying them something. They're going to be okay. But that's really not the case with most landlords. They've got mortgages. And so you've got the banks on the other side. So let's talk about, you still have to satisfy them. So how are you dealing with the banks?
Yeah. So I was very scared to make my first call to one of my lenders. So I have 3 properties that have 2 community lenders. So one community lender has 2 properties, another community lender has another property, and then I have 2 CMBS loans. So I was so scared. I just was so scared. But it was, coming to the time that I had to pay the mortgage. I had some reserves in the operating account, but we were kind of looking down the pike saying this is going to be going on for a couple months. So my first call I made was to Centennial Bank, and I called them because I had a huge reserve with them. And I thought, okay, I've got this huge reserve with them, and I'm going to call them and ask them if they'll let me use the reserve to pay the mortgage for the next month or 2. Mm-hmm. And I called my banker, And she said, "Oh, we've been waiting for your call. You were on the list for me to call you today. How about if we just defer your loan for 3 months to the end of the term?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yeah, that would be great. Like, I was shocked. I said, "Are you going to take it out of the reserve?" He goes, "No, we'll just add it to the thing." Within 30 minutes, I had a document. I signed it, and within an hour, I was set. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, let me call the next one." It was so easy. So then I called the next community bank lender, and he was, I had gotten an email that day from that bank. That was Valley Bank. And the email said, "We're here because we care for you." So I called my banker. I said, "I just got an email that you're here and you care for us." And he starts laughing. And I said, "Centennial Bank just deferred my mortgage for 3 months to the end of the term. Is that on the table?" Because a lot of the discussion early on was just go to IO, interest only. And I'm like, I don't want to pay anything. Like, I don't know what I'm going to get in rents. And this is prior to April 1st. So I didn't know yet. I didn't know. And that uncertainty, everyone keeps saying the uncertainty, that's what kills you. So he said, "Yeah, we're probably going to be able to help you, but get me some letter, what's going on with your tenants? Send me some emails, send me some letters." So now I got to go back to the tenants and say, "Can you put what you said in writing so I can show it to my lender so that I can get, some help?" Which they did. And that took about 2 weeks though, but we did get a document, we did sign it, and we were able to push that loan. The CMBS loans, completely different story. The horror stories that are flying around of what happened in 2009 with CMBS. We paid our 2 CMBSs before the first. We are not taking any chances. On one of my properties, I've already done a capital call for 3 months. We had 1 month. We had enough to cover the expenses in 1 month. At that property, I've got about a 37% collection. So we did a capital call. It's a great property. All my partners put money in. I said, "Look, in 90 days, if I didn't need it, I'll distribute it back." But we're not going to mess with CMBS. There were horror stories that happened in 2009 where a borrower called CMBS, they're the CMBS lender. They went to special servicing and they literally sold it within 30 days out from under them to like a shark. And then the shark proceeds to foreclose and you have to pay 1.25 to get your property back. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. So let's talk before we get too far down the CMBS, because some folks might not understand what that is. That's the commercial mortgage-backed security, where a bank packages your loan, your mortgage with other loans and sells that to institutional investors. And then usually the bank will either retain the operations of the handling of collections for that loan, or they'll sell it to a third, or they'll engage a third party who will handle the collections of it. And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about what happened in 2008 with the horror stories? You said that there was one that was sold, and of course now you're dealing with this. Yeah. This, like, you don't know the person, you can't look them in the eye, and you and I are both the same type of person. We want to telephone call, forget email. We want to pick up the phone. And if we can't pick up the phone, we want to look somebody in the eyeball. I think we're the same like that. And you can't do that with these guys because they're somewhere else and they don't know you. They don't care about you. Right.
So it's hard. So my partner, literally, this happened to him. He had 09 comes. Tenants are moving out. He's concerned about the mortgage. He calls his lender, which is, first of all, it would take 15 calls to get to the right person. He's like, "Look, I'm not sure if I'm going to make my mortgage. What kind of opportunities do we have to work something out?" They said, "We'll get back to you." They hang up. They don't comment. The next thing you know, it gets put on a watch list. It goes to a special servicer, which is like the department that handles troubled loans, a group in South Florida that had connections with that group. They start calling their friends. "Hey, this loan's in trouble." Loan was $8 million. They sold the loan to this shark group for $4 million. And they called him and said, "Sir, we are your new lender." And he said, "Who are you?" And said, "We bought the loan from the special servicer." and we're going to start foreclosure proceedings on you immediately unless you pay the loan in full plus 25%.
Painful.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And literally, he was not delinquent 3 weeks when this happened.
Oh, there are groups that are out there that will buy these CMBS loans that are looking for that type of opportunity to take advantage of the contract to be able to make those types of moves and buy a distressed property. I mean, this is what they do. And so many folks, when we're buying a piece of property, they'll say, well, the local bank, we've got some great local bankers. I have relationships with a lot of great local bankers. I know you do too. But the buyer might say, look, I got a better deal. It's 50 basis points less than the CMBS. This is your downside. Like, I want people to understand that. You might be getting 50 basis points less on your mortgage going through a CMBS deal than you are through a local bank. But here's the flip side of that, right? I mean, this is the situation you might be dealing with.
I will never, ever, ever, ever do a CMBS loan again, ever. My life with Centennial and Valley has been made so much easier because I can pick up the phone and call someone. I will never, ever, ever do a CMBS loan again. And we did it because it was a better deal. We'll never do it again.
No, I mean, there's so many benefits of dealing with a local guy. And, we've got some great folks here in the Tampa market. I know that you do down there too. And we name names all day of folks that always they have your back and you can look them in the eye, and that's so important. It's not worth the additional 50 basis points you might save sending it through a CMBS when you have these types of situations. It feels good if you can, if you're going to turn a property over in 7 years and you never have to worry about it. But when these types of situations happen, any kind of recession happens that you're having to ask for concessions, forget about it. There's just no prayer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what else about the banks that we didn't cover that maybe you think's important, Beth?
I really don't think anything. I'm so pleased that they stepped up to help. What a relief, in a very stressful situation. I just can't speak enough about the community banks. Like I said, it's just me. I'm not a big corporation. I have partners. I was scared to death to make that call. I was scared to death, and I never not paid my mortgage. Of course I paid the mortgage, but I was just going, oh my gosh, but if I don't get the rents, I can cover this month's mortgage. Then what? If I can't cover next month's mortgage? And I mean, and again, yeah. And the tenants think, well, money bags over here. She owns a shopping center.
Of course. Yeah.
She can afford to give us all free rent. And I'm like, okay, you're going to have a different owner. It's going to be called the bank because these keys are going to be handed over in about 2 months.
Beth, you've been really a beacon for the commercial real estate industry. You've been very active on social media. You've been out trying to share your experiences. You have not only you're managing your own properties, you have your own third-party property management business, correct? You manage other people's properties too. Is that accurate?
I only do one third-party leasing, but that gentleman, it's his first deal ever. So I'm helping him as a consultant because he's dealing with this now where he was just like, he owned a mobile home park. We knocked it down. We sold a part of it to Walmart. And now we're literally have developed a shadow anchored center next to Walmart. I'm his, consigliere.
Gotcha. So people can find you on LinkedIn if there's other areas that maybe, I know with brokers you also do some coaching consulting. So why don't you tell folks how they can reach you and connect with you?
Sure. And just one more last thing I want to share. I started something 3 weeks ago called the Freshman Forum. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
So, in 08 and 09, we lost a generation of people in our industry.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I am bound and determined that this won't happen this time. But, what happens is when the what hits the fan, the bosses are busy putting out fires. And the young kids, the 5 years or less, they get lost in the shuffle and they drop out. And then they don't have anywhere to go. And then we have, millions of people unemployed and they leave our industry. And that's what happened. We literally lost a generation of people. So I created something called the Freshman Forum. It's every Friday at 4:00. And I have between 180 to 270 kids on this call every Friday. I thought it would be 45 minutes. The first one lasted an hour and a half. The second one lasted over 2 hours. I had to shut it down because I had to go cook my kids' food for dinner. From that, with LinkedIn, a suggestion was made by a retailer, actually, that I take that group and I give them mentors. Do you know that we have matched 79 of these kids with mentors, with veterans in the industry? I am so happy that, if we can, and you've got to think how smart these kids are. Like, this is Friday afternoon, right?
Yeah.
From 4 to 6.
Yeah.
They are on these calls. We're Zooming. They have ideas. We've started a Facebook page that they're active in. They're doing offshoot groups. So that's my freshman forum. So, I'm going to keep this going for, as long as we have attention and interest. And, I'm very excited. But yes, so people can find me mostly on LinkedIn. Beth Azor, just my name, Bethazor. And then I'm on, Facebook and Instagram as well. But LinkedIn is probably the biggest platform that I try to, post the most content on.
Yeah, and I'll hop on there with the LinkedIn and throw my name and my hat in the ring there with you on the mentor side. I'm happy to help. You're right.
That would be great. I would love that. Please.
You're right. It was like I woke up all of a sudden, and the commercial real estate industry became very old. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. Right. We're now a mid to upper 50s is the average age group. That's not healthy. Yeah. It's not. And you essentially had this period where anybody from 2000, they started in 2004, 2005, they got washed out. And then really the brokerage houses were not hiring anybody from 2008 to 2013. So, now we've got another young group of agents that are coming in that are, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and they're going to get washed out too if somebody's not doing something about it. And it's kind of a dire situation, to be honest with you. We need young talent in the business.
Yeah, I reached out to my clients. So I have a bunch of the REITs, the larger firms are clients of mine. I travel around the country helping them figure out how to lease vacancy. And I sent 40 emails like the first week of April. And I said, I know you leasing directors are overwhelmed dealing with all of these nationals who is hugging your people. And I said, I'm going to do 20-minute rah-rah calls with your leasing teams. Let's set it up. And I've had 13 rah-rah calls with their leasing teams to give them some attention. I'm busy prospecting. I'm showing space. I'm active. I'm thinking, again, a year in advance. How can I get some tenants and some traffic in my centers? And then out of that I started getting these texts and these emails from these kids like, I think I'm going to get let go, or, I don't know, no one's talking to me and I don't know what to do. And everyone's, upset. And I said, okay, and there were multiple, like 10 and then 20. I'm like, okay, this group needs help. They need more than just a 20-minute rah-rah. And then, like I said, the first call was an hour and a half. And then the next call, 2 hours. I'm like, guys, I love you, but I got to go feed my kids. So it's been great. And the freshman forum, so anybody on the call, if they know someone on their team, because I think the majority of your callers are veterans, but if they know anyone in the industry 5 years or less, they can register for that on www.azoracademy.com, azoracademy.com.
Awesome. Beth, as I said, you really have been a beacon for the commercial real estate industry. It's much appreciated how much effort you put in trying to connect people. And when you start mentioning about the collaboration, you are the center of the collaboration. You are really a center of influence in trying to get together everybody from the brokers to the REITs to the property owners to all the retailers, the tenants, and trying to get people together to make sure everybody's on the same page and people understand each other's issues and challenges and educating people. And I think that's really a terrific service that you're doing throughout the retail industry. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or a summary, perhaps a wrap of this call before I let you go?
Sure. I mean, look, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. We're all in this together. We will, unlike the recession, this, I think, will be shorter. I'm hoping it will be shorter. I'm hoping that the government doesn't go crazy with, the restrictions in the dining rooms. We need to get the vaccine. We need to get our small businesses back open. And I think there's going to be a huge pent-up demand. So I'm very optimistic about my retail industry. We've all learned a lot of lessons, boy, lots of lessons learned. And it's our job now to take the lessons we learned and, move on and continue to invest in retail. There's going to be some opportunities out there. Don't shy away from it. Look, the hotel industry is going to be decimated. Right. I mean, office, I think, is going to have some problems. So multifamily is going to be fine, and retail is going to be fine. Buy or invest in great corners with lots of traffic, with not a lot of supply around, and you'll be set. So thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy being on the show, especially because it's in my home state, and I know a lot of people. I know a lot of your listeners, so I really, really I'm happy to help out, and thanks for the platform.
Hey, Beth, I really appreciate your time.
All right, dear.
And that was Beth Azor of Azor Advisory Services in Weston, Florida. As always, we appreciate Beth coming on and giving her insight. She gives unique insight of a person that is involved in all areas of commercial real estate, retail, landlord, broker, property manager, and she's able to provide a deep perspective on what the various people inside of the industry are going through right now and how they're coping and dealing with it. Beth, as always, we appreciate you and appreciate the time for you coming on. For other great guests, please go to our website at www.investfloridashow.com. We have a complete encyclopedia of great guests that you can choose and listen to. We hope you do visit it and listen to some of our other terrific content we have on there. Guys, as always, we appreciate you. We love that you come on and spend time with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odum and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.